Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to State Leave on Manor, where Roger and I have returned. Again, a day late. So, we were not able to do Epic Comic Book Wednesday this week because real life sucks, Roger. I've really got to do something about that one of these days, but we are here today, and I feel bad for not getting up a comic book video because my audience just loves my comic book videos so much that I thought I would do a catch-up video for the DC Finest books, because I didn't do one of these last month, and DC is just cranking these out. So let's talk about the DC Finest books that have been released since the last time I did this, which I think was in February. I'm getting all the DC Finest books as they come out. And let's talk about them because they've released some interesting things. So with DC Finest, which is kind of like DC's answer to Marvel's Epic Collections, fat trade paperback volumes from all over their history. They're publishing all kinds of different things. And they've made some interesting choices about some of the comics that they've reprinted. So let's talk about them. So this first comic book, this first DC Finest volume, is not one that my partner on Epic Comic Book Wednesday, Steve Donahue, would particularly like. In fact, I know he doesn't like this comic book at all. So every week, Steve Donahue will talk about the same comic book thing on Wednesday, usually. And he doesn't like this comic book. And I've noticed something about Steve's taste in comics. So if Steve really, really likes a comic book, you can count on that comic book being good. You can count on it being a good comic. If he hates a comic book, that means the comic book is really, really good. And this is the Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol. I love this comic book, The Doom Patrol, which came out in the 60s in 1963. And this has Doom Patrol comic books from 1963 through, it says on the side here, 1966. So that's kind of cool. The first run of the Doom Patrol from the 1960s, which was written by Arnold Drake. It had artwork by Bruno Premiani, and he drew all of the original run of Doom Patrol, which was a really interesting comic book. I believe this was DC kind of doing their own version of a Marvel comic because they were feeling the heat from Marvel. And it's really weird. This is a really, really weird team. Basically, we have the Chief, our wheelchair-bound Chief, who gets together 3 misfits with superpowers. He gives one superpowers, and he makes them into a team. And we've got Robot Man, who is the most popular member of the team, who is being stretched to death on the cover of this volume. We've got Negative Man with his Negative Man powers, and Elastigirl. And they're their original Doom Patrol team. And it's great. It's just like they're a weird band of misfits. They began in My Greatest Adventure. There's Negative Man there. And then we've got the Chief, who brings them all together. And they all give their origin stories, how Elastigirl, who was a movie star, becomes this freakish Elastigirl. And how this pilot becomes Negative Man. He has the power to become this Negative Man thing, like kind of shoots out of him and could do super things, but only for a very limited time. And then he has to go back. He's got 60 seconds to do whatever super thing he wants to do. And then we've got this race car driver who is in a terrible accident, and he is turned into Robot Man. And it's just a very strange comic book, but it's just really, really entertaining. It's full of really really weird stuff. I love it. And of course, Doom Patrol became a big deal years later. But the original Doom Patrol, it's not as weird as the Doom Patrol became, but it's still pretty weird for a Silver Age comic book. And it's certainly one of my favorite Silver Age comics. It didn't last particularly long. I forget how many issues the Doom Patrol lasted, but it was canceled. And in the last issue of the original run of Doom Patrol, okay, spoiler alert, the Doom Patrol is destroyed. They're killed. They're murdered. But of course, nobody really stays dead entirely, and the Doom Patrol was brought back, but always in a different form. Although Robot Man is always around. But it was great. I highly recommend the Doom Patrol. And we've got this volume of it that has how many issues? Well, we've got My Greatest Adventure 80 through 85, which has the first Doom Patrol stories. Then Doom Patrol 86 through 102. And a couple others like Challengers of the Unknown 48, Teen Titans number 6, where, you know, they made guest appearances. So it's pretty cool. The Doom Patrol. I was happy to see that. What else did they come out with in the last couple months for DC Finest? Well, this was an incredibly popular comic book. This was Teen Titans. Teen Titans, the Judas Contract. So this was Marv Wolfman and George Perez doing an incredibly popular comic book from the 1980s. This has stories from 1983 to 1984. And the thing I remember about this mostly is that I believe this is the storyline where Dick Grayson stops being Robin and he becomes Nightwing, and he gets the ridiculous disco Nightwing costume, which is still, you know, with the big collar, it's still my favorite Nightwing costume. It is so very much of its time. We will never see it again, but I really I really like that costume. So this is where he first becomes Nightwing, I think. And I was never a regular reader of the Teen Titans, and I don't know why, because it was pretty great, and everybody loved this comic. Everybody loved the Teen Titans. I remember at the time it was very popular, but I didn't read much of it, so they weren't exactly DC's answer to X-Men, because X-Men was, I believe, way more popular than Teen Titans, but it was for a DC comic. It was pretty popular. And this is 83 through 84, so I think this is before Crisis happened. I think. What year did Crisis happen? 86? But I don't think that Crisis had a huge change on Teen Titans, although it might have. I don't remember, because I wasn't reading Titans at the time. But it was really popular. Definitely one of Teen Titans. Teen Titans was definitely one of DC's most popular books. So there's that. That's cool. That's cool that that's out there. Here is something interesting. So this is Harley Quinn, which is a character I've always been able to restrain my enthusiasm about. Harley Quinn, who first showed up before she became a popular DC character. She showed up in the Batman animated television show as Joker's girlfriend. I think that's where Harley Quinn first appeared. So we've got this DC Finest volume, which is pretty large. I think it's, 600 pages almost, which has the earliest appearances in comics of Harley Quinn. And since she first showed up in the cartoon, you can't put the cartoon in the book, we do have some early issues of the Batman Adventures, which were the comic book version of the Batman animated series. And so we have those early Batman Adventures issues, which actually are pretty good. They're actually pretty good comics from what I remember. I read a few of them at the time. And then after the Batman adventures, where we have the early Harley Quinn, we go to when she actually showed up in the regular DC universe, which I think was here. Yeah. So, and then we have a bunch of stuff after that. But never my favorite character, but I'm getting all of these. And so I will read it eventually and catch up on Harley Quinn. Woo, yay. But here's a book I really was looking forward to because I've never read any of these comics. I think I might have read the very first story in here, which was reprinted in another volume, but everything else in here I've never read. This is Plastic Man, The Origin of Plastic Man by Jack Cole. And so this has all the old-timey Plastic Man adventures. Plastic Man, who showed up before the Elongated Man and Mr. Fantastic over at Marvel. He was the original stretchy guy who showed up in Police Comics. And so this has stories from 1941 to 1944. One thing I like about this series is that they're kind of jumping all over the place in DC Comics history and giving you all kinds of weird stuff. And it's been a while since this stuff has been reprinted. I think that these were reprinted in archive editions back in either the late 90s or early 2000s. I can't remember exactly when. But I never got any of those. So this is my first chance to read any of these old police comics with Plastic Man, who is a really, pretty cool and pretty weird character. And so these comics should be interesting. I can't say too much about them because I haven't read them, just that I'm really, really excited that they have been reprinted. And this is a pretty good sized volume, 570 pages of Plastic Man. So that's awesome. Finally be able to get to read these. And finally, the most recent DC Finest volume that I just got, a couple days ago? This is Suicide Squad Trial by Fire. So this is 86. So this is right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, 86 through 88, where the new Suicide Squad was put together. There was a comic book that was called Suicide Squad that was put out by DC Comics in the Silver Age of comics that I don't think had anything to do with this newer Suicide Squad. I think that was an entirely different thing. And this, we have a bunch of criminals that are put together into a team run by the government. And they're put on incredibly dangerous missions. I didn't pick these issues up when they first came out. I wasn't particularly interested in this. And I think the reason I wasn't particularly interested in this is because Captain Boomerang was on the team. And I hate Captain Boomerang. At least I did. He had the most ridiculous costume and he threw boomerangs around. He was like a lame Flash villain. He was probably the lamest Flash villain. And that's saying something. At least I thought so at the time. Maybe these comics make Captain Boomerang cool. I will find out. An interesting thing about this is that this collection doesn't just have those initial Suicide Squad issues, but it also has the entire Legends miniseries, which came out in 1986, which was done by John Byrne. So after Crisis was supposed to kind of reset the DC universe, and it just ended up messing up continuity worse than ever. It just destroyed continuity at DC Comics. And so they came out with Legends, which was supposed to kind of smooth things over. And it just made things worse. Every time DC Comics tries to revamp or reboot or jumpstart the continuity so new readers can jump on board, whoever those new readers are, every time they do that, they mess it up and make it worse. So that now continuity in DC Comics is incomprehensible. But we did get this comic book series of Legends, and this is where the Suicide Squad, this version of the Suicide Squad first showed up. So I understand why they put it in here. So yeah, you've got, it wasn't particularly good, the miniseries. It had good artwork in it. John Byrne did some great art on the series, but I didn't particularly care for it. Even though it had, it had Captain Marvel, that was cool. There was some cool stuff in this, but yeah, it including Ronald Reagan makes a guest appearance. Ronald Reagan made a lot of appearances in the 1980s in comic books. And so, yeah, we've got Ronald Reagan, and we've got the introduction of the Suicide Squad in that miniseries. And so we have a lot of early Suicide Squad issues, and I've never read any of that stuff. We've got Secret Origins, which it looks like it does talk about the original Suicide Squad. So that should be interesting. Yeah, the secret origin of the Suicide Squad. So that'll be cool, because I don't know any of that, because I never read this issue of Secret Origins. So we've got that, the secret origin of the Suicide Squad. And then we have the first few issues of the Suicide Squad. How many issues do we have? First 10 issues of Suicide Squad. We also have Detective Comics 582, Firestorm 62 to 64, Firestorm the Nuclear Man number 5. So we've got a few different things in here from 86 to 88 of the Suicide Squad. So that is cool. I'll finally be able to read this stuff. So that's it. That's all the DC Finest stuff that's come out in the last couple months that I haven't been talking about. And next month or the month after, I will catch up again with all the stuff that's coming out from DC Finest, because this is a series I've been really wanting to happen, and it finally happened, and I'm pretty excited about it. Okay, guys, I'll shut up now. I will catch you next time.